Howl didn't go out for a few days. Sophie discovered a pile of Michael's clothes that needed mending, fetched out thimbles, scissors and thread, and set to work, singing cheerfully to herself. "Happy in your work?" said Howl sarcastically. "My old suit needs mending too." It was clear Howl hadn't yet caught the girl he was after. Sophie listened to Michael asking rather obvious questions about it, and Howl slithering neatly out of answering any of them. At the bench, Howl worked a good deal harder and faster than Michael, putting spells together in an expert but slapdash way. "I know I'm slapdash," said Howl, "but there's no need for you to copy me. Always read the spell right through, carefully first. You'll find every spell of power has at least one deliberate mistake or mystery in it to prevent accidents. You have to spot those. Now, take this spell." Watching Howl scribble remarks on the paper with a strange everlasting quill pen, Sophie realised that she could learn a lot too. It dawned on her that if Martha could discover the spell to swap herself and Lettie about, then she ought to be able to do the same here. With a bit of luck, there might be no need to rely on the fire demon Calcifer. That day Howl was very restless, and in the night Sophie heard him roving up and down. Next morning he seemed unable to contain himself, while Michael put on his best plum velvet suit to go to the palace in Kingsbury with a new spell for the king. When Michael had gone, Howl suddenly said, "My feet itch. I'm going for a walk on the hills. Here's something for you to keep busy with." Sophie found a grey and scarlet suit dropped into her lap from nowhere. Howl, meanwhile, picked up his guitar, turned the doorknob green down, and stepped out among the scudding heather above Market Chipping. As soon as he'd gone, Sophie hobbled to the door.
"Where are you going?"
asked Calcifer. "To do something I didn't dare do until they were both out." Sophie twisted the square knob until the black blob pointed downwards. Then she opened the door. Outside there was nothing. Nothing at all. No smell and no feel, neither hot nor cold. Nothing. "What is this?" she asked Calcifer. Calcifer was as interested as Sophie. He leaned right out of the grate to see.
"I don't know. All I know is that it's on the side of the castle that no one can walk around."
Sophie shut the door and turned the knob green downwards. Then she sat down and began mending the grey and scarlet suit. Soon afterwards Michael came in. His eyes went to the empty corner where the guitar usually stood. "Oh, no, not the lady friend again. I thought she'd fallen in love with him, and it was all over days ago." Calcifer fizzed wickedly.
"You got the signs wrong. Heartless Howl is finding this lady rather tough. He decided to leave her alone a few days to see if that would help, that's all."
"Bother," said Michael. "That's bound to mean trouble." Sophie clenched her fists knobbily in red satin. "What does Howl do to these poor females? I was told he ate their hearts and took their souls away." "Then you must come from Market Chipping," said Michael. "Howl sent me down there to blacken his name when we first set up the castle. It's only true in a manner of speaking."
"Howl's very fickle," said Calcifer. "He's only interested until the girl falls in love with him. Then he can't be bothered with her."
"Well, I think it's wicked going around making poor girls unhappy," said Sophie. "It's heartless and pointless."
"He's made that way," said Calcifer.
Michael had just suggested lunch when Howl flung the door open and came in, more discontented than ever. "Something to eat?" said Sophie. "No," said Howl. "Hot water in the bathroom, Calcifer." Rinsings and gushings came from the bathroom while Sophie fried lunch.
"He's using a lot of hot water," said Calcifer from under the pan. "I think he's tinting his hair. I hope you left the hair spells alone while you were cleaning. He's terribly vain about his looks."
"Oh, shut up," snapped Sophie. "I put everything back just where I found it." Suddenly the bathroom door crashed open and Howl shot out. "Look at this! Look at it! What has that one-woman force of chaos done to these spells?" Sophie and Michael whirled round and looked at Howl. His hair was wet and seemed the usual flaxen colour right to the roots. The only difference might have been a slight, very slight, trace of red. Sophie found that agreeable. "I think it's very nice," she said.
"Nice!" screamed Howl. "You did it on purpose. It's ginger. I shall have to hide until it's grown out."
He spread his arms out.
"Despair! Anguish! Horror!"
The room turned dim. Huge, cloudy, human-looking shapes bellied up in all four corners and advanced on Sophie and Michael, howling as they came. Calcifer shrank hurriedly down in the grate. Michael grabbed Sophie by her elbow and dragged her to the door. He spun the knob to blue down, kicked the door open and got them both out into the street in Porthaven as fast as he could. After a while the tumult subsided, and Michael opened the shabby door rather cautiously. Inside, Howl was sitting on a stool in an attitude of utter despair, and he was covered all over in thick green slime. There were horrendous, dramatic, violent quantities of green slime, oodles of it. It covered Howl completely. It draped his head and shoulders in sticky dollops, heaping on his knees and hands, trickling in glops down his legs, and dripping off the stool in sticky strands. It smelled vile.
"Save me,"
whispered Calcifer. He was down to 2 desperately flickering small flames.
"This stuff is going to put me out."
Together, Sophie and Michael trundled Howl into the bathroom. "Hot water, Calcifer," called Sophie. It took an hour to wash the slime off Howl. Luckily, the suit Sophie had just mended had been draped over the back of the chair, out of the way of the slime. Finally, Michael led Howl forth from the bathroom, clothed in grey and scarlet, and sat him tenderly in the chair by the hearth. Howl just sat, looking tragic and shivering. Sophie made Calcifer move over so that she could balance a pan of milk on the logs. When it was warm, she thrust a mugful into Howl's hands. "Drink it. Now, what was all this fuss about? Is it this young lady you keep going to see?" Howl sipped the milk dolefully. "Yes. I left her alone to see if that would make her remember me fondly, and it hasn't. Now she tells me there's another fellow." Sophie felt quite sorry for him. Now his hair was dry, she noticed guiltily. It really was almost pink. Then it occurred to her that if Howl could cover himself with green slime so easily, he could just as easily turn his hair the proper colour. "Why don't you feed the girl a love potion and get it over with?" she said.
"Oh, no," said Howl. "That's not playing the game."
Sophie's sympathy shrank again. A game, was it? "Don't you ever give a thought for the poor girl?" Howl finished the milk and gazed into the mug with a sentimental smile. "I think of her all the time. Lovely, lovely Lettie Hatter." Sophie's sympathy went for good. Anxiety took its place. "Oh, Martha," she thought, "you have been busy."